I actually have an indicator among many indicators that I have that it looks like this, where I'm showing all the different cycles, all the previous cycles. And it's really cool because basically what you're seeing here, I'm superimposing the three cycles that we had so far. And every time I go down by basically I'm going back in time by 4 years. See, here is where we are now. This is where we were 4 years ago. Where this is where we were 8 years ago. So it's a way of representing my picture. It's almost like a map of what Bitcoin does, or at least has done so far. What it has done so far is that the overall path is the power law, right? In fact, even during the bubbles, you see how I connected this dot here, right? We leave a power law, we reach a peak, then we go down, and usually we take 1 year to go up, 1 year to go down, and then look what happens. We go back to the power law, basically. So if the bubble, the total result of the bubble is like nothing happened. We just stay on the power law. And this is why the power law is so powerful, because it even explains that it's almost like the bubble didn't exist. The total result, when you go up and then go down, is like if we were moving. It will have been exactly the same if we simply moved along the power law. But, the bubble are there, and they are exciting. It's a different discussion of what you want to do about that. That you want to lock some of your gains. That is one of the things that, again, I have argument with people about it, because I'm kind of a contrarian. I think that actually if we do have bubbles, maybe you do want to lock some of your gains during the bubble, but it's a separate discussion. But the idea is that there is a very precise pattern even there, right? We have this behavior along the power law that is 2 years where we move like in a very narrow region between the support and the middle power law. Then we have 1 year where we go exponential up, 1 year exponential down, but the total result is still like the power law. And so we can identify all the cycles and tell if a cycle continues and they repeat in the same way, what happened at every particular time. Now, unfortunately, when I compare it, I was kind of excited in the beginning because I thought, all right, the bull usually starts like Q4 of this of the end of these 2 years that we are moving along the power law. And we did move along the power law. And then I said in November, I actually anticipated this was people gave me credit for that, to tell that in November the bull run started. And in fact, it started. We went from 50,000 all the way to 90, right? And if you look, see, this is the same thing, but now I'm subtracting the general trend, right? So you see oscillations around the trend. And I also normalize them by volatility, because the first bubble were enormous. We were like 15 times away from the trend. Then we went down to 10. Then we went down to 5. So if you normalize by volatility, then it looks like actually they are comparable. Because so this is why most of the changes in the peaks, how big the peaks were, can be explained by a change in volatility. And so then you can compare them, and you can see, right, there was the trend that I explained where we go up during the bull, and we go down during the bear, and then we stay kind of flat. That means basically we are following the power law, because remember, we are subtracting the power law. And when I compare the two cycles, the current cycle and the previous one, they kind of look almost identical for some time, right? Look at this. And then kind of in the middle of December 10, we deviated. We went down. The last cycle we ripped. We were ripping through. Look at this, what we did. Now, the cycle before that, we ripped when we had a major correction. So now the first cycle, so this is cycle number 3 and cycle number 2. For some reason, I didn't plot cycle number 1 here, but you can see where it is here. It took until January 14 to actually start it to go up. So it's possible that we started early, like the previous cycle, so cycle number 3, then we kind of cooled down, and maybe we are waiting mid-January to start to go up, right? If we follow the previous path, because I'm trying always to look at what Bitcoin did in the past, because Bitcoin has been so regular, almost like a clock. So I'm a little worried that, we started well, but we are not doing so well. It's not worrisome in terms of a power law, because if anything, we are actually hugging the power law. It's working. This is the only time when I do not want to actually stick to the power law. I want to do better, right? Because this is exactly what it does during the bull run. I like the bull run. The previous calculation that they did, it is not a guess. It's all based on math. It's based on the math of the decay of the peaks. Even that follows a precise mathematical pattern. So if you take it as at face value, how fast this peaks decay, and you do the math, it turns out to be 200K. And so this was my projection. It's no feelings. I don't do anything by feelings or by guess. I calculate. And that was my calculation. But that is based
what's that time frame there?
It's usually happening. Everything happens at quarter four. We are in 25. So this year, at the end of this year, at quarter four of this year, we should reach 200,000. When we go down, again, this is under the premise that everything repeats like before. If everything repeats as before, we should go down to 75K after the peak. And it takes about 1 year to go back. So quarter 26 will be 75 again. So that is how I see it. It's the only thing I can do, because instead of making guesses and feelings, I'm trying to use math. And the only way math works is that thing repeats like before. And that is the big if, right? I have much less doubt about the overall power law, because I think there is some more fundamentals about the power law. The cycles are not an integral part of the power law. It's like an additional analysis, right, that you do, because you say, in one end, it's like if a bubble didn't exist, because we leave a power law, then we go back to the power law. It's almost scary how precise it is. But in the end, there are, and if we want to understand them, then, the only way to make sense of that mathematically is to compare with what happened before. So right now, I'm not yet worried. Yesterday, I was doing a silly example. I said, imagine you have a child that is not developing as fast as they should, right? And the first year doesn't talk, the second year doesn't talk. Einstein didn't talk, I think, until 2 or 3 years, and then he became a genius. Because some children take time, right? But by the year 3, he doesn't talk. Maybe you want to go to the pediatrician and say, what is wrong with my child, right? So I'm not yet there where I'm worried about, we are not going to have a cycle, but I'm starting to wonder what is happening. And there is one thing that I mention all the time that I see different from the other cycle, that is liquidity. So if you look at liquidity, so I made this model that is the purple line. So basically, I look at I don't know if you are familiar with liquidity, but basically, is a measure of how much money is moving around and where, right? So you can take the money M1, M2. I'm using different Federal Reserve information. So basically, almost every micro a micro information that you can imagine, all these quantities. And so I'm looking at all these things. Now, there is one problem with this, that is I'm not giving values that are proportional to their impact, because you can actually, there are mathematical ways of looking at what is the relative weight of each single component. I have not done that yet. I want to, but right now I'm summing all these things together. And then I look at the relationship with Bitcoin. It's not a simple relationship. It's a relatively complicated model. And when you make complicated model, you have to take it with a grain of salt. This is why power law is so beautiful, because it's the simplest possible model that you can imagine. You have a straight line. How simple than that can it be? No, this is why it's so powerful, because it's simple. there is a little to argue with that. With something more complicated, you don't know if you're adding noise, if you're adding components that should not be there. So take it with a grain of salt. But at the same time, it's supposed to represent the relationship between liquidity and price. So basically, kind of like the fair value of Bitcoin if was only based on liquidity, right? So right now, that fair value is 33,000. So it's much, much lower than the actual value. And what happens in the past, when you do models like this, right, you always try to see if there is any meaningful pattern. One meaningful pattern I found before was every single time we had a bull run, the purple line was above the white one. And the white one is the price, just pure price, right? The closing price. And so the purple line here, see, the bull started, it was above, right? Previous bubble, the bull started, it was above. So my interpretation of that, in fact, the top of the bubble was the opposite, was when the price became crazy, right? It went almost vertical. Oh, look at this. This was a 13, right? It was absurd. It went like almost vertical. And then the liquidity didn't follow because, liquidity is much more slower than that, right? This is mostly FOMO. So it was almost a way of identifying the top, saying when the price disconnects with reality, then this is when the bubble is probably is going to burst, right? And so I was very happy about this indicator. For okay, this is cool. It give us and then also for some time, because I do these market reports every week. I was telling my viewer, we were analyzing this. They say, look, it seems like there is a correction. The price reached the power law. Mostly, all this was FOMO due to ETFs. The price was pushed up by people getting excited by the ETF. It had a correction. We went from 70,000 to 50K, and it was continuing to correct like this while liquidity was going up. This is why I have these lines, because I thought, oh, kind of cool. They will kind of meet. I actually liked the idea that there was even a bigger correction, because usually the bull run is like a spring. More you compress the price, more it will come up faster. And so I thought, okay, the prices will correct, the liquidity is going up, 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 up. We will have a scenario that is similar to that, right? Where the purple line is above the white line. But all of a sudden, more or less when we were supposed to meet, they actually went into a different direction. So this is why I put a big question mark, because I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to interpret it, right? It's not super bullish not to have a liquidity following the price. Why we don't have a liquidity, right? And my worry is we still had some bullish behavior, mostly because of Sailor, ETFs. But the big question, and again, this is why it's a big question mark, because, as a scientist, certain things I know and understand, and I'm trying to use math and physics, etc., to get an idea about them. Others, you don't know, right? This is part of doing science. Many times you don't know what is going on, and you are trying to figure it out. So I have a big question mark there. I don't know. What does it mean? It could be three things. It could mean one is a bad thing, because we do need the liquidity to have actually a bull market. Now, it's possible that we continue along the power law without the liquidity. We don't need the liquidity for the power law. That could be one thing. The second thing could be that the liquidity is coming. It's just late. Maybe it's going to wait for the inauguration. Whatever is going to come, and we are going to be fine. And the third possibility is that we don't need it, and maybe it's lower than expected, but ETFs and Sailor alone will be able to push these things and go to whatever, hopefully 200,000. It's going to look bad for people that are thinking 500,000, a million, because I already doubted that ETFs and Sailor by themselves can bring this to 200. I am less worried about following the power law. I think the power law will be there. Now, it's possible even, maybe this is a fourth scenario, where everybody's expecting a bull, like I was saying with the example of a child. Inauguration comes, maybe there is a little push, but nothing special. Then, the end of the month arrives, February arrives, March arrives, and maybe let's say we continue along the power law, and many people take that. It is still amazing because by next year, for example, by power law alone, we should be 130, 135, something like that, if we follow the power law by the end of the next year. But maybe many people will consider that too bearish, and then they start to sell, and then we have a bigger correction. So I don't know. This is where I put a huge big question mark. I don't know what is going on. That if anything, when people say, "Oh, this time is different," if anything that is different is really this, and it's not bullish. It doesn't look super bullish. It looks a little bit bearish. But I don't know what is it. I don't know the interpretation of that.
Is the power law, is that applicable to stocks? It's a different beast, right? So is there a MicroStrategy power law? Like, is that, I don't know if you've looked into that at all and have thought about it, or how does that work?
If you want the answer to that question right there, and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. Do it.